this out because the 1937 band didn't have as many instruments as Glenn would later have. So to correctly present 1937, we present it with the size of unit that existed during that year. Just a little bit of an introduction before I let him go. 1937 is often portrayed as a failure in the world of Glenn Miller. It was not a failure, and what you're about to hear proves it. What we had happen in that year was a very serviceable and very good 37 era band, and if you didn't know any better, you can tell this was fine if you didn't know what Glenn Miller was going to become. Last year, my good friend and colleague, Greg, approached me with the idea, and a lot of us turn out about the idea of, let's look at 1937. We'll do a special presentation about it. We'll do it in Clarinda where people care and are interested in music. Well, that was done. You guys, some of you were here for that and you enjoyed it. This, I promise you, is going to even be better and more insightful. And with that, Greg Parnell.
Thank you, Dennis. Go ahead, Eric. Thank you so much. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 1937 Part 2. As Dennis mentioned, we did this last year, and I think it went over pretty well. People were very interested. We played some music that had never been heard before, and we'll do a little bit of that tonight. Some stuff that hadn't been heard since probably 1937. Anyway, my name is Greg Parnell, and I'm a former member of the Glenn Miller Orchestra. I was with the band from 1996 to 2004. And actually, Kevin and George were on the band with me. We go back that far. So you probably recognize the melody of the opening number, although it might have sounded a bit unfamiliar. Several years ago, when Nick Hilscher was the leader. I think Nick is in the audience. Are you here? Nick? There's Nick Hilscher. How about a round of applause for Nick Hilscher? We were looking at some music, and there was a folder called Theme. So we decided to get into that folder and see what was in there. And after looking at it carefully, we realized that there were a couple early versions of Moonlight Serenade. So Nick cleaned up the music and sent it out. And you heard it's a little bit different, right? The trumpet players, you should have seen them in rehearsal. These dirty looks that I got from them, because it's not easy to play, right? Yeah, I'm still not happy about it. So anyway, Glenn Miller studied arranging with Schillinger. I think it's Schillinger or Schillinger, however you want to say it. That's where he developed the Miller sound. And this is where Glenn put this piece of music together. And being the perfectionist that he was, he tried several times. It makes sense, right? Until he got the piece of music that you're all familiar with, which became Moonlight Serenade. And the story is that Robbins Music learned that Miller was recording Sunrise Serenade for RCA Victor and believed Moonlight Serenade would make the perfect companion title. It was released in 1939, and the recording quickly became the most successful and recognizable instrumental hits of the big band era. Jazz critic Gary Giddens once described the emotional power of the song this way: Miller exuded little warmth on or off the bandstand, but once the band struck up its theme, audiences were done for. So even today, 80-some years later, Moonlight Serenade continues to be one of the signature tunes of the Glenn Miller Orchestra, and we're glad you enjoyed that early version of it. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history and get into some of the music from 1937. So before forming his own orchestra, Glenn Miller had already built a highly successful career in New York City as a freelance musician, arranger, contractor, and band manager. Throughout the late 1920s and 1930s, he worked with many of the biggest names in music, including Benny Goodman, Tommy Dorsey, Ray Noble. Miller had become well respected in the music business for his arranging skills, his leadership, and his ability to organize and manage successful recording sessions. He could have easily remained one of the busiest and most successful freelance musicians in the industry, but he wanted something bigger. He wanted to create his own band that had its own sound. In January of 1937, he began searching for musicians to form his new band. One of the first important people he hired was Hal McIntyre, whom he discovered in Connecticut. McIntyre quickly became one of Glenn's most trusted musicians, and in many ways his right-hand man. Their friendship and professional relationship remained strong for years, and Glenn would actually help him later, forming his own band. Miller continued building the reed section by hiring George Sarajevo on alto sax and Jerry Jerome on tenor sax. During the search for musicians, Glenn often traveled from club to club and hotel to hotel, listening to players. On one occasion, while checking out a tenor saxophone player at the Holland Hotel, he was actually asked to leave because he hadn't ordered any alcohol. He later laughed about it, saying, "That's the first time I've been thrown out of a joint for not drinking." Once the orchestra was assembled, the band began rehearsing extensively to develop the precision and blend that Glenn demanded. Interestingly, before they ever performed publicly, the orchestra entered the recording studio for its very first session on March 22nd, 1937. At that time, it was customary for bands to record 4 sides during a session. Glenn, however, pushed the musicians harder and completed 6 recordings that day. An early example of the drive and determination that would eventually make Glenn Miller one of the most successful names in the big band industry. So we're going to play some music from that first session. This one is a song, the lyrics were by Alfred Bryan and music by Fred Fisher. Originally published in 1913, so it's still a little bit of an older tune at the time. It was featured that same year in the famous Ziegfeld Follies. The song was inspired by the title character from the hugely successful Broadway play, Peg of My Heart, which opened on December 20th, 1912 at the Court Theater in New York City. So more than 20 years later, Glenn Miller selected the classic tune as one of the very first recordings for his newly formed orchestra, blending the popular music of an earlier generation with a fresh new sound he was beginning to develop. The recording featured Carl B. Sicker on tenor saxophone and Hal McIntyre on clarinet, giving audiences an early glimpse of the musicians who would help shape the orchestra's signature style. This arrangement was done by Glenn Miller, as were most of them from that 1937 band. It carries library number 2. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with big band libraries, they're usually organized and cataloged by number. So even in the civilian orchestra library, In the Mood would be what number? 18. Now, some numbers were placed on the music that don't correlate with the actual the library that's cataloged. Those numbers in the catalog, they're almost somewhat chronological. So you get an idea as the numbers get higher that when they came. And it's a great thing that they did because it kept those things organized. So we'd like to play this for you from 1937. This is Peg of My Heart.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Tony Sheehan, how about that clarinet player? Very nice. Thank you so much. This next selection also comes from that same March 1937 recording session. The song was written in 1933 by Ned Washington, Victor Young, and Lee Wiley. During the big band era, many of the great songwriters and composers worked closely with the band leaders, hoping their orchestras would either record or simply play their music live and make the tunes popular. Ned Washington, for example, was only 36 years old in 1937, but he had already written classics such as When You Wish Upon a Star, My Foolish Heart, and The Nearness of You, all of which would later be recorded by Glenn Miller. Victor Young, who was 38 at the time, also became one of the most successful composers of the era. His credits include When I Fall in Love, My Foolish Heart, Stella by Starlight, many others. Glenn had actually worked with Young in New York recording studios during the early 30s, years before forming his own orchestra. Glenn wrote this next arrangement, and it carries the library number 20. The chart was designed to feature either a trumpet soloist or vocalist. At the time, in 1937, it was originally recorded by a vocal trio called the Tune Twisters, but today we're going to feature Eric Stabnow on the vocal. This is Anytime, Any Day, Anywhere.
You want? Here we go. 1, 2, 2.
Anytime, any day, anywhere. Drop a line, honey mine, I'll be there. If you want me again, won't you please tell me where? And the old joys once more we'll share. Only say where you are if you dare. Though the way may be far, I don't care. Just a word, that is all, and I'll come to your call. Anytime, any day, anywhere.
How about for Eric Stabnow on the vocal? How about for Kazu on the trumpet? Okay, so we've got one more selection from that very first recording session. This song was written by Percy Wenrich with lyrics by Edward Madden and was originally published in 1912. The tune became especially popular when performed in the style of a barbershop quartet in the very first Daffy Duck cartoon, Porky's Duck Hunt. Anybody remember that? Oh, you do? Good, excellent. And that cartoon was from 1937, this very same year. This arrangement was written by Glenn and carries library number 11. And on this number, we've got a treat for you. This is going to feature our mixed boys choir. This is called On Moonlight Bay.
1, 2, 3.
to hear from Kevin Sheehan on the clarinet, Kazu on the trumpet. And how about for our mixed boys choir? Impressive, huh? So 6 weeks after that first recording session, on May 7th, 1937, the Glenn Miller Orchestra played its very first engagement. It was a one-night performance at the terrace room of the Hotel New Yorker, filling in for Gus Arnheim. The president of the hotel chain happened to be in attendance that evening and was so impressed with the young orchestra that he helped arrange an extended engagement for the band in New Orleans beginning in mid-June. Just 1 week later, on May 15th, the band opened an extended engagement at the Raymore Ballroom in Boston, where they remained through June 15th while also traveling throughout New England for additional one-night performances on their evenings off. The Raymore Ballroom had become an important starting point for many young bands hoping to establish themselves. By 1937, the ballroom had lost some of its early elegance and had become a typical city dance hall, dimly lit, heavily draped, and a bit worn with age. But it also had loyal following, and most importantly for Glenn, a patient and supportive manager who believed in the band and gave them time to grow and improve. So now for the exciting part of the show. There were no recordings or broadcast recordings of this next song. This is in a sense brand new, never heard before Glenn Miller arrangement, unless you were there in 1937. Is anybody there? I always joke with Dennis, but Dennis, were you there? Not that one. This song was written in 1937 by the same famous songwriting team of Harry Warren and Al Dubin. Anybody recognize those names? Yeah, a few of the hardcore fans do. That's the same duo responsible for countless standards of the swing era. The song was introduced in 1937 motion picture The Singing Marine, starring Dick Powell. Like many songs from Hollywood musicals of the time, it quickly found its way into the libraries of America's dance bands and became popular with both musicians and audiences alike. Glenn Miller recorded quite a number of songs written by Harry Warren, especially during the orchestra's Hollywood years in 1941 and 1942. Glenn is known to have recorded at least 15 to 20 Warren compositions, many of them written with lyricist Matt Gordon or Al Dubin. Some of the most famous Harry Warren songs recorded by Glenn Miller and his orchestra include Serenade in Blue, I Know Why, Kalamazoo, At Last, and of course the very first gold record, Chattanooga Choo Choo. So this has catalog number 35. We hope you enjoy The Lady Who Couldn't Be Kissed.
One, two,
Andrew on the trumpet. You heard a few short solos, Eric Scott now, Kevin on the tenor, and Aiden on the clarinet, right? So by the beginning of June 1937, the Glenn Miller Orchestra had only been performing publicly for a few short weeks when the band returned to the studio for its second recording session on June 9 at the Brunswick Studios. At this point, the orchestra was still very much a work in progress. Glenn was constantly experimenting with personnel, searching for the right combination of musicians and the sound he had in mind. Several musicians from the first March recording session were still with the band, but there were also a number of new faces in the orchestra. Personnel problems were also becoming a challenge for the young orchestra. Trumpeter Sterling Bowes was fired for what Glenn described as non-musical conditions. Though the exact details were never fully explained, ironically, Bowes was rehired less than 24 hours later after his replacement proved to have even worse non-musical conditions. So stories like this give us a glimpse into the difficulties Glenn faced while trying to build and discipline a touring orchestra. So although the June 9th recording session showed some improvement, the results were generally considered only fair. The band was still developing its identity, and Glenn had not fully discovered the signature sound that would soon make the orchestra one of the most successful bands in America. So, Community Swing was composed and arranged by Glenn Miller and recorded on June 9 at that recording session. The tune was released as the A-side of a record backed by Sleepy Time Gal on the B-side. The recording featured Charlie Spivak on trumpet, Hal McIntyre on clarinet, and E. Kenyon on drums. Even at this early stage, you can begin to hear Glenn experimenting with the balance and style that would eventually evolve into the famous Miller sound. Interestingly, this arrangement carries library number 1, which suggests it might have been the very first arrangement that Glenn ever wrote. We don't know that for sure, but it could be. Well, my friend Carl Pearson gave me some information that Glenn had actually already used this in 1936 when he was a guest conductor with the NBC Orchestra. So special thanks to Carl for that information. We hope you enjoy Community Swing.
1, 2, out, 2, 1.
to on the trumpet. That's a pretty good arrangement for being the first one, right? On June 17, the band opened at the Hotel Roosevelt in New Orleans. They had a very tough schedule working, you gotta remember this, or think about it, from 6:30 p.m. to 2 a.m. Monday through Friday, and until 3 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, with an additional 3-hour set at 2:30 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Pretty impressive. Originally booked for 2 weeks, but after a few renewals, the band played a record-breaking 10-week engagement at this hotel, finishing up on August 25. The band was a huge success, and even though Glenn was operating at a loss, the gig boosted his morale. The band members also had a great time, and at the end of the run, hated to leave New Orleans. Shortly before the band closed in New Orleans, Irving Fazzola joined the band on clarinet, and shortly after that, Bob Price replaced Ralph Capelli on trumpet. Musically, both proved to be great additions, but they were also potent boozers. The effect they had on the other guys who looked up to them, and eventually upon the band's morale, was devastating. So this next one is another arrangement that was never recorded or broadcast. Once again, it was written by the legendary songwriting team of Harry Warren and Al Dubin for the 1937 Warner Brothers film, The Singing Marine, starring Dick Powell. During the 1930s, Hollywood studios and Tin Pan Alley publishers worked closely with America's dance bands, supplying them with a steady stream of new songs for radio broadcast, recordings, and ballroom performances. This tune quickly became part of the growing swing-era repertoire and was recorded by several well-known orchestras of the time, including Duke Ellington and Bunny Berrigan. Songs like this were an important part of the developing swing-era repertoire. Band leaders such as Glenn Miller were constantly searching for strong new material from Hollywood films and Tin Pan Alley publishers, hoping to find songs that connected with audiences and helped define their orchestra sound. So this is catalog number 36, and we hope you enjoy You Can't Run Away from Love tonight.
One, two, 1, 2, 3.
Run away from love tonight, not while there's a moon above tonight. We've a rendezvous that we just can't evade. A little kiss or two, are you afraid? I'm going to hold you close to me tonight. In the dark I'll make you see the light. Though the dawn may find you gone, there's no surprise. You can run away from love tonight.
let you in on a little secret. Originally, Eric was going to play that melody on the tenor saxophone, but right before the show started, he said, I'm going to try to sing this. That's pretty good for just taking it out. So following the end of the band's extended run at the Hotel Roosevelt in New Orleans on August 25, the band opened at the Hotel Adolphus in Dallas just 2 days later for another steady run. Following that run, on October 3rd, the band started a 4-week run at the Hotel Nicollet in Minneapolis, working 7 days a week. After Minneapolis, the band started another run in Boston, back at the Raymore Ballroom from November 5 through December 17, while also doing run-out dates on off nights. Glenn had been having trouble finding a good drummer. He went through a few drummers, but finally ended up with Doc Carney from Detroit. Glenn was finally happy with the band. He had a great sax section, Doc's strong beat, Fazzola's gorgeous solos, and Bob Price's excellent lead trumpet playing. So while the Glenn Miller Orchestra was continuing its extended engagement at the Raymore Ballroom, the band returned to New York City in late November for its third recording session. The session took place on November 29th at the Brunswick Studios and marked another important step in the orchestra's development. By this point, the band had been performing together regularly for several months, and Glenn was beginning to gain more confidence in both the personnel and the overall sound of the orchestra. Although the famous Miller sound had not fully emerged yet, you can still begin to hear greater precision, stronger ensemble playing, and more personality in these recordings. During that session, the band recorded 4 selections: My Fine Feathered Friend, Humoresque, Silhouetted in the Moonlight, and this next number we'd like to perform for you now. These recordings capture an orchestra still evolving. And this one, if you were here last year, you heard this, and it's a good one. From 1937, the song was composed by Glenn Miller and piano player Charlie McGregor, and was recorded at that November 29th recording session. The song features lyrics sung by Kathleen Lane and the band that introduced a new dance, the jive. You clap your hands, you swing out wide, do the Susie Q. Someone will have to show you what the Susie Q is later. You mix in a step or two, put them all together, and you're doing the jive. There's also a rap dialogue between Glenn Miller and Jerry Buck Jerome. The solos are by Jerome on tenor sax and Irving Fazzola on clarinet. Doing the Jive was performed by Glenn Miller and his orchestra and broadcast on the radio as early as July 24th that year. A second version was released later on with Tex Beneke and the dialogue with Glenn Miller from the June 20, 1938 NBC radio broadcast from the Paradise Restaurant that featured Gail Reese on the lead vocals. This is one of the few tunes that continued to be used when Glenn reformed the band in 1938. This has catalog number 55, and we're going to introduce our female vocalists in just a second. Here you're going to hear also the rap section by Eric Stabnow, and that's a very young Kevin Rocky Sheehan. So how about a warm welcome for our female vocalist, Hannah Clare.
1, 2, oh, 2, and
Clap your hands and swing out wide. Do the Susie Q, mix it, a step or two, put it all together and do the jive. And you stomp your feet and swing out right. Mess around, shake a boogie woogie style. Everybody swing it when you do
jive? What is the jive? Why, man alive, the jive's the jive. Why, I cut you some riffs, and Foz did too. Just what else are we supposed to do?
Take you cool now, Buck. You give me a chance. You're all messed up, cause the jive's a dance.
Tell me some more, I'm a sucky mule.
Put down that horn, we'll have dancing school.
Do the Susie Q, mix in the step two, put them all together and you do the jive. Stomp your feet and swing out wide. Mess around a while, shake your boogie woogie style. Everybody swing it with you, do the jive. You can't play rummy or crazy or dummy. Don't let it bother you, 'cause you'll be the king when the band begins to swing. You'll be a smarty, it's the life of the party. You can do a funk. Swing out wide. Drop a little bit, beat it out, make a bit, and everybody's happy when you do the jive.
How about for Mary Claire? And to our rappers, Eric and Kevin. And once again, our Rich Boys Choir. We'd like to play one more from that November 29th recording session. This one is based on one of the most famous classical melodies ever written. It was originally composed in 1894 by the great Czech composer Antonin Dvorak as part of his collection Humoresque Opus 101. Over the years, the melody became enormously popular and was adapted into many different musical styles, including swing and dance band arrangements during the big band era. This version was arranged by George Sarajevo, one of the early musicians and arrangers associated with the Glenn Miller Orchestra. Sarajevo played alto saxophone with the band and later became highly respected for his arranging work with artists such as Frank Sinatra during the early 1940s. In these early Miller years, George helped Glenn experiment with different textures and musical ideas as the orchestra continued searching for its unique sound. Like many bands of the era, Glenn enjoyed adapting familiar classical melodies into dance arrangements that audiences could enjoy both in the ballroom and on the radio. This is one of the few arrangements that continued to be used when the band reformed in 1938. It has a catalog number of 40. We hope you enjoy Humoresque.
Thank
Once again for Kazu on the trumpet. And our piano player is so new that I can't remember his name. Isaiah. How about for Isaiah? Doing a great job. So we've got another arrangement for you that you've never heard before. This one is one of the most famous melodies in American music history. It was written in 1851 by Stephen Foster, often remembered as the father of American popular music. Originally inspired by Florida's Swanee River, the song became enormously popular throughout the United States and remained a favorite for generations of performers and audiences alike. It is actually the state song of Florida. By the swing era, band leaders were constantly adapting well-known American melodies into modern dance arrangements, and this became another opportunity for the Glenn Miller Orchestra to showcase its evolving sound. This song was also recorded by Tommy Dorsey and his orchestra in 1940, showing just how popular these updated arrangements of classic American songs have become with both musicians and ballroom audiences during the swing era. I'm not sure if this is programmed or not, but you might be able to hear this tune if you attend either the Tommy Dorsey concert that they'll do on their own, or our Battle of the Big Band show tomorrow night, which if you don't have tickets, you'll want to get tickets for that show. It's very exciting. So this has a catalog of number 70. It's another arrangement by George Sarajevo. This is Old Folks at Home, also known as Swanee River.
One, two, three.
Eric on the saxophone. Once again for Johnny on the trumpet. So by December of 1937, the Glenn Miller Orchestra was still very much a developing band. The orchestra had been working steadily at the Raymore Ballroom while continuing to travel back to New York for recording sessions as Glenn searched for the sound and style that he wanted. On December 13th, the band returned once again to the Brunswick studios for its 4th recording session. Even though the orchestra was improving, Glenn remained extremely demanding in the studio. In fact, the band reportedly spent nearly 5 hours recording just 2 songs that day. Another example of the perfectionism that would eventually help Glenn become who he became. The session featured vocalist Kathleen Lane on both songs. These recordings capture a young orchestra still experimenting, still growing, and steadily moving closer to the sound that would soon make Glenn and his band world famous. By November of 1937, Glenn Miller had already expanded the reed section by adding a 5th saxophone. Some of the newer arrangements were specifically written for 5 saxes, while others simply had Irving Fazzola doubling the tenor saxophone part. Now, as brilliant as Fazzola was on clarinet, saxophone was not really his strongest instrument. Glenn eventually experimented by having him play the lead tenor down an octave from the clarinet. Lead tenor down an octave from the clarinet, which resulted and created a smooth, rich sound that blended beautifully with the sax section. At the time, Glenn didn't seem to pay much attention to that idea, but a few years later, that same concept would become one of the defining characteristics of the famous Miller sound. So I'd like to introduce our 5th saxophone player. That is Mitch. Let's hear it for Mitch. So we're going to play one of those songs from that recording. This was written by Milton Agar and Jerry Livingston and Ned Weaver in 1937. As I said, the recording featured Kathleen Lane on vocals. While with the Glenn Miller Orchestra, she recorded several sides, including My Fine Feathered Friend, Silhouetted Moonlight, Every Day's a Holiday, and Sweet Stranger. Her recording of Sweet Stranger received especially positive attention and was even selected for Metronome Magazine's Best Records list. After the Glenn Miller Orchestra disbanded in 1938, Kathleen continued working with several well-known bands of the swing era, including orchestras led by Bunny Berrigan, Bob Chester, and Red Norvo. She later appeared with Bob Crosby Orchestra and even performed with Woody Herman before retiring from the music business around 1941. This has a catalog number 94, and I believe there are about 100 in that 1937 category, so we're getting close to the end of these arrangements. But we're going to welcome Hannah Claire back to the bandstand to sing Sweet Stranger.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
That's a good one, Hannah Claire. Kevin on the clarinet. So we'd like to do the second song from that recording session. And this arrangement was done by Carl B. Sicker, who was a member of the saxophone section. He contributed a few arrangements during that 1937 period. And this one is called Every Day's a Holiday. That's a good one, Hannah Claire. Thank you so much. So things started getting worse by December. The band wrapped up their run at the Raymore and played a handful of one-nighters with band personnel being in a state of flux. There were lots of car and bus breakdowns and heavy snow. One of the better boozers wrecked one of the two cars that the band needed for transportation, and another smashed up the truck. Glenn lost over $18,000 that year, was having managerial problems, his wife was sick, some of the band members were heavy drinkers and prima donnas, and morale in the band was very low. Glenn gave the band notice on New Year's Eve and disbanded after their final job on January 2nd, 1938. Now this wasn't the end, however. Glenn started making new arrangements and looking for new band members that very same month in 1938. So, I know we're all looking to get to dinner here, so we're going to wrap things up. Just a couple thank yous. I want to thank Dennis Sprague for all of his help throughout the years. Let's hear it for Dennis. Nick Hirscher for all the work he did through the years with cleaning up this music. It was incredible help. Let's hear it for Nick Hirscher. The CEO of Glenn Miller Productions, that's Charles DeStefano, for keeping this band on the road. He's been with the company for over 40 years now. So let's hear it for Charles DeStefano. So we're going to wrap it up with just one last tune. This is something that I found in the library that was interesting to me. It's something that Benny Carter composed. And in looking at the arrangement, I noticed that it was the same arrangement that Tommy Dorsey and Benny Carter put out his own recording, and Buddy Berrigan put out, it was basically the same arrangement. Nobody was there, so we don't know if Glenn bought this from Benny, or Benny handed it to him, or if somebody stole it and gave it to Glenn. We'll never know. But this is something by Benny Carter. It's called Devil's Holiday. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, the Glenn Miller Orchestra. Once again for Hannah Keller. Listen, I need to really thank these musicians. They've put in a lot of hard work to put this music together. Thank you, everybody. They'll be back here on the stage at 7:30? 7 o'clock tonight, so you won't want to miss that concert. Eric has some great music for you tonight. And also tomorrow, that concert with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, and then the Battle of the Big Bands. So we'll see you there. Thank you so much.